As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 5 of season 12, and today we're going to be going into something new and something fairly recent, fairly fresh, but also since it's got a second season coming out, hopefully I can carry on with this show because it's a pretty good show. But this came out probably mid last year, 2025 at this point, and yeah, it was one of those shows that sort of just came and went quickly enough, but when it actually was here, it was talked about quite a lot. It was a very salacious show, and it was really quite intense and fun, but also filled with deceit and engaging characters, and yeah, it was really good watch. I remember watching this with my now wife when it first came out, and yeah, the first scenes were intense. So let's get into it anyway, and let's face it, the intenseness, the intensity doesn't stop throughout. But today I'm going to be talking about The Hunting Wives, and since I've seen that this has got a season 2 coming, it's going to be season 1. So I think we should just get into it. I remember watching this during the summer, like I said, and yeah, I rearranged a few things to include this show straight away because it is just very, very good. So, like 9 months after it airs, I'm covering it, but it wasn't Ginny and Georgia, so I didn't cover it straight away. Anyway, let's get into it. So, this is The Hunting Wives, season 1, episodes 1 to 4. Episode 1, Strange and Unfamiliar Places. So we start the episode with a young girl running through the woods, and I say young, it's from the back, she's blonde, and we can see that it's a youngish, slender woman. So we don't know who this is yet, but she is running through the woods, and obviously being pursued by someone. She's crying out for help. And then we go straight into the episode. We meet a young blonde woman named Sophie. Her husband has a new job, and he is taking her to lunch or to a charity event with his new boss. And when we get down there, we realise this guy is mega rich. We're not sure what he's done yet, but he's got a pretty big house and he's got quite a lot of land, and everyone around him seems to be quite well off, just by the looks of them and their clothes that they're wearing. And yeah, whomever this is who's hosting this party has done well for themselves in whatever field that they work in. But the young blonde woman, Sophie, and her husband, Graham, are new to the area. It seems that they've come down from Boston, and it also seems that Sophie has an issue with drink. Sophie's played by Brittany Snow, And Graham is played by Evan Jongikit, which I've fucked that right up, but that's the best I'm going for. But he seems to kind of talk down to her quite a lot. Like I say, Sophie has had an issue with alcohol before, and when they get to the bar, he orders drinks for just him. And so it would seem that he's kind of a domineering husband, or at least he always gets his way. We saw earlier in the episode that they also have a son. But Sophie is overwhelmed by all of this, and she runs off into the house. She goes to find a bathroom, and when she does, she comes across Margot. Margot is played by Marlene Ackerman, and straight away you can see that there is an attraction between the two, or there is an interest of the two. And Margot has no qualms about getting naked in front of this brand new stranger. It would seem that Margot is on her period and she asks for a pad, but Sophie doesn't have one. It also seems to suggest throughout the episode that Sophie might be pregnant, until it's confirmed that she's not. And so instantly Margot wants to be friends with Sophie. You can see that she's got designs on her straight away. They go out, and then Graham shows his wife his new boss, as his boss stands up on stage, played by Dermot Mulroney. Jed is an interesting character, and he seems to be running a campaign to become the governor of Texas. That's where they are right now, and it is a whole different ballgame from what was going on in Boston for both Graham and Sophie. So it's a whole new life for them. Speech about how he's not going to be running, or he might be running, we don't know yet. He likes to keep a mystery, does this boy. We meet his wife, and of course it's Margot. They seem to have a very loving relationship, but you can sense there's an undercurrent there. You can sense there's something a little different about these two. They go over and they speak to Graham, and of course Sophie. And it's here where Sophie actually meets the rest of the hunting wives, as they are later called in the episode. These women are all kind of, I don't know, Real Housewives types. If you've all seen the show, you'll kind of get what I'm going at. All well done, all glammed up, they look great, they all love a gossip, but they don't work, they don't do anything other than hang out, do lunch, and maybe look after the kids, and service their husbands when they need to. But Margot is so taken with Sophie, she asks her to come to a lake house with her and the rest of the girls, so that they can just hang out and just, gossip about the town and talk trash about people and whatever it is that they want to do. Drink, eat, and, well, later on we see that they go shooting, hence the name The Hunting Wives. Sophie's reluctant at first, but she kind of has a thing for Margot straight away, and you can see it. And she knows that the feeling may be mutual, so she agrees to go along with them. Graham, happy that his wife is making friends, and especially the boss's wife, he kind of just lets her go with it. But he is cautious that he doesn't want her drinking. She goes off, she enjoys the time that she has with them, including doing a bit of shooting, which she wasn't sure of at the first. And then they go into town, or they go to a local dive bar. They end up dancing the night away, but also get harassed by a man with one eye, and he refers to Margot by a different name. She freaks out and tells him to sling his hook, but it would seem that Margot isn't who she says she is. One of the other girls, Callie, is actually married to the sheriff of town, and he is very trusting of his wife. He leaves his laptop open, and she manages to get onto the police databases. She searches for Sophie's name because it would seem that now that Margot is becoming friends with her, Callie has got jealous. So maybe she had the affection for Margot, and Margot had the affection for her previously, but now Margot's turned her attention elsewhere. But Margot doesn't seem to have much problem getting attention. She also has the local Reverend Clint. His wife Jill is part of the Hunting Wives crew, and their son Brad has a thing for Margot as well. He also has a very pretty young blonde girlfriend called Abby. And so now we've got two potentials for who we saw in the first scene. One is a young blonde teenager, the other is a young blonde 30-something. But we never see her face, we never really see any distinguishing marks on her body, so there is potential as to who this is. But it seems that there is a mystery to be unlocked due to the fact that this girl has been murdered, and we're going to find out how we get there through this story. But also there's going to be some very sexy shenanigans throughout, I am damn sure of that, because, well, Margot and her husband seem to have a very open relationship, and they have both said that they are interested in Sophie. They don't give a shit about Graham, it would seem, but they both think that Sophie's something special. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting series, but let's get into it. Episode 2, Knocking Boots. So, as mentioned in the last episode, there was a young woman running through the woods, and then we see that her body has been found by a young girl and her father while they were out hunting. We then go to 2 weeks earlier, so we can obviously pertain from that the girl who was running through the forest is someone who is involved in the show right now. And like I've said, she's blonde, so potentially it could be the lead character Sophie in this. But we also have Abby, and we also have many other blondes in this. But let's go with Sophie. So we see that her and Graham have ended up going to church to celebrate with the rest of the town. Now this is a very Texas kind of town. If you think about anywhere in Texas that has some decent money behind it, this is the kind of place that we're talking. Somewhere that is very Christian values, family values, but also, and I'm not saying this for all Texas places, but there is a dark underbelly in this town, as I said before. But since it's their first time at the church, they are brought on stage and they get to celebrate with everyone else. However, Sophie ends up crying because she feels moved by the whole event, even though she was very reluctant to go in the first place. We then meet Star, Abby's mum, who is sort of an outcast of the town. Now, she's not an outcast, really. She's just more on the poor side of town instead of, well, up with the rich elites that hang out with Margot and the hunting wives. And she seems to be a little bit shunned by them as well. When her name is mentioned, they kind of mock her a little bit. And it would seem that anytime Abby is mentioned, she isn't good enough for their son Brad, or for the Reverend and his wife's son Brad. So it seems that there is a lot of tension between the families. So later on that night, Sophie and Graham end up going over to Margot and Jed's place. It seems like it's just going to be a nice night of, drinks and chats and getting to know the boss and getting to know the new family in town, etc. But there is obviously a sinister undertone to all of it. Whenever it comes to Margot and Jed, you can always suspect that there is something in the background. And this becomes more apparent when Margot ends up taking Graham around the house. Jed asks if Sophie wants a drink. Of course, she denies having one, even though we know she had one in the last episode, because she ended up going off drinking with Margot after they went out for the night. And when she denies having this drink, he manages to tempt her around. He tells her that this bottle is really expensive and it's really good stuff, and maybe she could just have just a little sip. And so she does. However, it's at this point that he decides to make a move on her. The rule apparently between the two of them is that, and this is something that Margot tells Sophie later on, is that Margot isn't allowed to sleep with other men, but if they want to fuck women in front of each other or just separate, they can. And they tell Sophie that they have, both of them, designs on her. They both find her a very attractive woman, and maybe it's something that they could be sorting out together. So Sophie is shocked by this, but she's also intrigued by this because she does seem to have a thing for Margot. And it does seem like she wants to embrace this new Texas life. So she goes out shopping and she manages to buy some cowboy boots and just little bits that kind of signify Texas, I would suppose. It's kind of a stereotype, I know, but hey, I'm not the one who filmed the thing. But when she comes out, she actually sees the one-eyed man that she saw from the club the previous night, or in the last couple of days. She starts trying to get away from him, but he follows her, and then when she jumps in her car, she thinks she's got away from him, but he starts to ask her questions. It seems like this guy is a detective, and he is looking for someone called Mandy. Now, Mandy is the name that he used for Margot in the previous episode. And we know that Margot has a secret life, or a secret past life, but we will get to that. But while she is distressed by all of this, she ends up running over to go and see Margot. She's worried about this guy who's been chasing her, and while on the phone, she knows that Margot is over at the lodge that she was at previously. And so Sophie goes over, but when she gets there, she finds something that she wasn't expecting. Now, as for Callie, who has been investigating Sophie, the information that she's found on her, we're not sure what it is yet, but it's something really juicy, and she seems like she cannot wait to tell the world. Now, we know that it's to do with her drinking, or we know that it's to do with Sophie's drinking at least, and we know that's why she stopped. She had a car accident previously, but we don't know what happened really. And so we can only assume that the investigation that both Callie and now her husband, who is in on this, have done is pretty good. There's some pretty decent information in there. And so we'll come on to Margot because, well, since we know that she has designs on Sophie as well as having potential designs on Brad, we know that she has touched him inappropriately and watched him masturbate from the previous episode, something I didn't really let on about, but she went off looking for him. She found him in one of her stepson's bedrooms and he was with Abby at the time, and when Abby wouldn't give it up, I suppose, he ended up masturbating while she was praying. And when Margot saw this, she was kind of turned on by it. So we know that there is something going on between those two as well. We know that there is a relationship with Callie, and we obviously know that she's married. So there was a lot going on for Margot. But now that Jed is actually trying to run for governor, he tells her we're going to have to start being squeaky clean. We can't have stuff coming out about us. We can't have things that shouldn't be happening. We can't have people investigating us and finding out a lot of the stuff that we do and how we like to wind down. So maybe we need to start being a little bit more squeaky clean. Of course, Margot's pissed at this because she just wants to be out there having fun. She doesn't want him to be governor. She just wants to live their lives. Rich, happy, fucking around, doing whatever it is. So she goes over to see Callie. Straight away, she's straight through the door and she's hands all over her, pinning her against walls, kissing her, putting her hands down her pants, and then she stops her and tells her, look, we can't do this anymore. Such a fucking tease. She tells her that they have to start being sensible, that they can't be seen together doing this kind of thing. It's just going to have to be friendship from now on. She can't risk her husband not becoming governor. She also goes off and sees her brother because her brother is, well, a little bit of a scumbag. And we find out that actually Margot's real name is Mandy and that the guy who is investigating her wasn't actually hired by her brother as Margot suspects. But her brother is, well, he's trailer park trash, we'll put it that way. And so when she goes over to see him, she's trying to make sure that he doesn't do anything that will hurt Jed's campaign as well. So she pays him off and makes sure that he stays in his lane for a while. And she hopes that that includes getting this investigator off her tail. But he seems to have no idea of what's going on. So he doesn't care. He just knows that his sister sucked her way to the top, so to speak. And then the last one that she's going to have to deal with is Brad. Turns out that she has been having a relationship with him, and even though he has been sleeping with Abby and, making her feel guilty about not sleeping with her and really trying to put pressure on her, he's also been fucking Margot at the same time. He's a real fucking jock, that's basically what he is. But he goes over and sees Margot at this lake house. She tells him exactly what's got to happen, that they can't do anything anymore, that they aren't allowed to be together. And he starts throwing a bit of a paddy. He's he's a child. He's 18. He's a real fucking child about it. And basically says, why can't we be together? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? And eventually she just kind of backs down and says, look, she knows that he's going to go off to the press, to the people, and just say, well, she's been fucking me or whatever it is. So she has to placate this child, and eventually she just tells him, look, we're not allowed to do this. However, I'm not saying we shouldn't do this. And then they start to fuck around. And it's here that Sophie turns up. She turns up at the house, she knocks on the door, she rings the doorbell, no answer. She goes round to the back of the lake house, and there she stares directly into the eyes of Margot, who stares right back at her as she is getting eaten out by Brad. And she absolutely loves looking at Sophie while Sophie is looking at her, and Sophie feels an exhilaration for Margot. She wants to know more about her, probably primally, by the look of her. So she's getting really into this. Whatever this new life is and whatever these people are, she's kind of into it. Episode 3, Sunrise Tells the Story. Now, things in this episode are really starting to heat up, but we start with a police officer, and she is heading into the woods, she is heading to a cabin, she is told by someone else who works with her not to go anywhere near this house. However, she's heard screams coming from the inside, and she decides that she needs to check it out before anything gets too bad. Earlier on in the season, when Jed was talking about how he wanted to run for governor, or maybe not run for governor, at his big party, he also mentioned about how a young girl had gone missing and that everyone was holding out hope that she would come home soon. However, here we see this cop run into this house looking for this girl, and then she gets knocked out. She ends up getting injured, and later on in the episode we actually see her, and she is very much worse for wear. She's walking with a cane now, and she's got a real impediment when it comes to remembering things. A bit like myself, except I haven't been injured in the line of action, I'm just an idiot. Then we get into the real meat of the episode. So Sophie and Graham are having sex for the first time in what seems like ages between the two of them. Sophie hasn't really been that bothered about it for what seems like quite a while. When they reference it earlier on in the season, it just seems the kind of thing that she doesn't do. Even though they're hinting at trying for another baby, I think that's why she's not bothered. She doesn't want another child, but hey ho. And especially down there in Texas, it seems like it's everything that the man wants and not what the woman wants. But again, it just fucking sucks to be a woman in this world, and I'm thankful that I'm not, but I'm sorry for anyone that is and has to go through any of this shit. I hope we all become equal one day, I really do. But for the first time in a long time, she's having sex with her husband, and he notes it. He says, kind of, what got into you? Now, we know from the last episode what got into her. It was she saw Margot having sex, or having Brad go down on her. We also saw her in the last episode masturbate at the thought of being with Margot, so we know she's got a definite thing for her. And it's now leaked over into her personal life with her husband, and I mean, he's reaping the benefits, but she's not exactly being honest with him. And to be fair, I don't think he'd be able to compete whatsoever. He seems very unassured about himself. Margot does, however, keep trying to get in contact with her, and every time that she does, she kind of gets ignored. It's only later on in the episode when Sophie and Graham go to the beach, and Graham sees that there is a message from Margot and says, look, just message her. Tell her you're at the beach. Sophie does, and Margot comes over and gets her, like in one of the most dramatic fashions, to come and quote-unquote rescue someone. She gets on a jet ski and literally rides across the lake to find where Sophie is and picks her up and tells her husband, I'm taking your wife. He thinks it's all innocent, but obviously he's not been looking at the way his wife looks at this woman, and they head off together. They head back to the house, and all the girls turn up, so the hunting wives are there, and they decide to play a little game of Never Have I Ever, all at the request of Callie. So Callie obviously knows what's been going on with Sophie, and uses it to her advantage in this game. Callie says, never have I ever killed anyone. And of course, now Sophie has to confess what happened. She tells them all it was an accident and that this woman came out in the street and she knocked her down. She was driving, a good lawyer got her off, but yeah, she fucked up, as people do. She didn't mean any malice by it, she was just in a bad way. So Callie realises how badly she's actually treated Sophie at this point, and everyone else is pissed at Callie for what she's done. And so they decide that the day's ruined and they all leave, apart from Margot and Sophie. Sophie is convinced to stay by Margot, and she tells Sophie that she's got a surprise coming. That surprise ends up being Brad and one of his friends. Now, this friend of his, Jamie, has had designs on Sophie since he's set eyes on her. Every time that they're in a scene together, Sophie seems to light up a little bit. I mean, the guy's 18 and she just feels flattered that such a young man would be coming after her. Not saying that she's old at all. I mean, she's probably mid-30s at this point, which isn't old at all, but she does feel flattered by any attention that she's getting. And so they end up swimming in the pool, they end up playing silly games like spin the bottle, and she ends up making out with a guy who she probably hasn't made out with anyone else since she married her husband. I say hopefully not, but you never know. And then she ends up doing the ultimate and kisses Margot, which is what she's wanted all along. She heads off because she feels like the room is spinning and the alcohol has got to her, and this kid Jamie follows her. He starts charming her and he manages to put his finger in her pants and play around a little bit, and she's enjoying it. It's the first time she's been touched by someone that isn't her husband in such a long time, and she is obviously attracted to him, and the excitement of knowing that Margot is in the next room as well is probably doing something for her too. But she is obviously cheating. But she's just trying to enjoy the night. She comes back and Margot has found her Xanax. And by her Xanax, I mean Sophie's Xanax. And at this point, they're snorting it. And by the end of the episode, Sophie wakes up on the deck outside and she doesn't know what the hell's gone on. She just knows whatever happened has happened in a whirlwind of drugs and alcohol, and of course she's got messages and phone calls on her phone from her husband wanting to know where she is. And then, like I say, by the end of the episode, we see this detective who had been taken out at this weird house. She comes across the scene of the young blonde girl who was running through the woods before. She walks down, she sees the body, and she identifies them as Abby. She also notes that there is a gunshot wound in her chest, which may have been mistaken for a pig bite because a lot of boars had been around the body when it was found. And so we're not sure why Abby's been killed, but the suspects are innumerate at this point. So Abby has been having a lot of problems because the pastor's wife has been really pissed off with the amount of attention she's been giving Brad. Because Jill, who is Brad's mom, thinks that Abby is a gold digger, and she is only after Brad for one thing. If she can get her claws in him, then she can come out of the poverty that her mother has kept them in for so long. These rich people don't seem to understand that that's not how this works. And especially in the world we live in right now, where you can strive and strive and strive, and you can do 2, 3, 4 jobs and only be making ends meet. Whereas, like I said before, she is a pastor's wife. She only runs the women's clubs and things like that don't really take a lot of time. I'm not saying that it's not hard work, but it's not as hard work as doing actual work. And especially when that's your only job. I can't imagine it's that taxing. But she's one, and then obviously Brad is another who is potentially a suspect. There is plenty of women that have guns around this town that could be a suspect, and we don't know how far this goes yet. Obviously the series is focusing on Margot and Sophie. They could be suspects, but who knows right now. Hopefully, well, I know we'll get answers, but things should start to piece together shortly. Episode 4, Cheat Day. So picking up from where we left on the last episode, so Abby's body has now been found. Also, what I forgot to mention is the fact that Sophie, in the last episode, got peer pressured into buying a handgun. And of course, that wouldn't go down too well with Graham, but also, of course, it's gone missing while she was in this drug-fueled haze. And again, she woke up on the docks. So instead of staying in the comfort of the house, she's left, and God knows where she's gone. And now a dead body has turned up. So this episode's mainly about the people who were at that house setting boundaries, really, as to where they were. Brad obviously doesn't want to be caught up in all of this, and neither does his mother Jill. And so they essentially come up with a plan to say that Brad was at home all night, even though she knows for certain that he wasn't. And of course, she doesn't know where the hell he was. We do. We know he was with Margot. And who knows what they all got up to. And then we have Margot. She wants to cover her own back and make sure that people know that she was nowhere near Brad that night. So they come up with a plan, and by they I mean Margot and Sophie, that they were at the house alone. After everybody left and Callie had said what she'd said, Margot and Sophie were left alone. So they both have alibis now as to where they were that night. Things take a turn for Margot and Sophie when they're actually discussing this plan. They realise their attraction to each other, and they end up spending most of the afternoon in bed, just enjoying each other. We also learn more about what happened to Sophie and what happened with the accident. So we know that she killed a woman during a car accident, but what actually happened was she ended up getting pregnant and there was issues, and she had a hysterectomy. So she's got a hysterectomy scar on her body, and Margot asks about it. And it would seem that Graham never actually understood what this was, that she could never have children again. And that's what really started her drinking. The drinking then led to drink driving and subsequently the death of someone who she never even knew. The lawyers got her off, but she still carries that guilt around with her, and the fact that she doesn't drink anymore, or didn't up until she met Margot, speaks volumes as to why she wanted to stay clean and sober. Brad, however, is taken into custody and tells the officers that basically he was with his mother all night. They stand up for each other and make sure that everyone knows that they are together. But this is obviously going to piss off Abby's mum, Star. She hates the fact that these rich pricks around them can get away with pretty much anything, and she thinks that Brad is the one who did this because she witnessed the argument between them the day before. Abby found out that Brad had been using the app Signal, and that meant that he was sending private messages. unless you're Pete Hegseth, who doesn't know how to send a private message, especially on Signal. But Star is just irate at everything that's going on in this town because it's the whole rich versus poor, the corrupt versus the saintly. They're trying to do their best to try and get through life, and these rich pricks are just fucking taking advantage of everyone, doing whatever they want, sleeping with whoever they want, and just getting away with it. And it fucking sucks watching these poor people struggle while the people above them are just lording it over them. Now, one character I haven't managed to mention yet is a guy called Pastor Pete. Now, Pastor Pete is from a different parish. He has come up and has been working under the Reverend, and he seems to run the youth group. The issue with Pastor Pete is he came over from Virginia and had some issues there previously. It also seems that he gets very close to the women in the group, and the women actually kind of like him. They think he's cute, they think he's been working out, they have a little bit of a crush on this guy, including Abby. We also see in one episode where he is in his van looking at what looks like Instagram, and he's masturbating to pictures of Abby. So he may be a pastor, but he isn't all that saintly. And of course, he has this shady past, and had this obsession with Abby, so we can only assume that maybe he is involved as well. Like I said, the suspects are starting to line up now. But he is currently someone who isn't on the police's radar. The only one who is Brad, and we know that he's already got his mother on side. But throughout the day, the lead detective has been ignoring some calls from a different sheriff. The sheriff has been ringing to tell them that there is a gun of interest that he needs to know about. It has been used in a robbery, and subsequently it has matched with the shooting of Abby. And we know where this is headed. At the vigil that night for Abby's murder, the police arrive and Sophie is arrested. And it's the first time that Graham finds out that she has owned a gun as well. So we know that she's had a past where she has run someone down before. And we can't really see her getting out of this one anytime soon. Of course, she's got powerful friends now, so maybe they can send a hotshot lawyer over, but we won't find that out until next time. Okay, so where are we at so far? We've got Sophie and her husband Graham who have now come into town, and Graham works for Jed, who has his wife Margot, who seem to be some sort of swingers, or at least they have an open relationship. Margot has been seeing a young lad just out of school called Brad, who is around about 18. He's also seeing a girl called Abby, who has just been killed. Margot also has been having an affair with the sheriff's wife, a woman named Callie, who is basically her best friend, until Sophie came on the scene. And now she has slept with Sophie as well. Margot's husband Jed has been telling her to calm things down when it comes to whoever she is sleeping with because, well, he's trying to run for governor and doesn't want anything coming up about them. And then we have Abby, this young girl who has been killed, but she has been in a tumultuous relationship with this guy Brad, who seems to have a bit of a temper. She is disrespectful of her mother and the way that they live. She doesn't like the fact that they're poor, even though her mother is just doing her best. And then we have the people around them that could have done something to her. So we have Jill, who is Brad's mum, who is very protective of her son. We have Brad, who may have flipped and gone off the handle. We have Sophie, who has woken up on this deck without her gun and has now been arrested for the murder of Abby because it was her gun that shot Abby. We have this creepy pastor who, I know that's a website, but we have this creepy pastor who has basically been masturbating to images of Abby and has been a little bit obsessed with her since coming to town. And it is just an interweaving web of lies, deceit, and sex. And I'm here for it. This has been really good. This has been excellent TV so far, and I'm glad that I'm covering this again. It was 9 months ago that I watched this, and it's definitely held up. Maybe 6 months, but it's definitely held up. And especially with everything that's going on in the US right now, I'm covering this right now as the president is in sort of a semi-war with the NRA after the death of Alex Pretty. So yeah, this show is about the NRA and about how gun laws are and stuff like that, and people in Texas talking about gun laws, gun lobbies, all that shit. I don't understand it, I'm British, but yeah, it's very interesting to watch it with the context of what's going on right now in the US. And you've got a man who seems to be very Republican in his values and is using stuff like people coming over the border, but who's also championing for guns, whereas right now people are talking about people coming over the border and championing against guns. The only problem is he's in the White House doing that. And, he'll probably turn tail and run because that's what he does. But for now, it's just kind of ironic. But I'm going to get back to this series because this isn't about politics. But I do love this show so much. It's very fun. It's very sexy. But doesn't feel gratuitous. And I suppose it's a lot of lingering looks and a lot of... I just watched Heated Rivalry not 2 weeks ago, and that is gratuitous throughout, but kind of fun. But yeah, this is a totally different beast, this show. I think it's very well acted, and yeah, just a really good watch. The mystery behind everything that's been going on, and you're just trying to pick out the clues to solve the actual riddle. So yeah, it's been good. It's been a good watch. But I'm not going to be picking this up for another 2 weeks, so I'm done. Like, share, subscribe, all that good shit, and I really hope you're enjoying this podcast because I enjoy making it. And like I say, I've had some time off while I've been getting stuff done, but I'm back now. I'm back on it, and yeah, I appreciate anyone who listens, anyone who interacts, and come talk to me if you can. You can find me on all socials, and I'm happy to answer any questions or, in fact, take any suggestions from you guys. So, as you've seen, I've taken a few already. For instance, Friends from College, which comes this season. And it just means a lot to me when people will engage with me. So, I'm done. But until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.